How did Jesse Matthew escape justice as he abused, raped, and killed women across 4 states? Using expert digital imagery from a specialist forensic artist to show the changing faces of a killer, this series reveals the life timelines and the red flags of those who will one day be investigated for taking a life.
He didn't care if he was hurting other people, if he was doing things that other people didn't want. It was all about himself, whatever was pleasing to him. So he oftentimes just flew by the seat of his pants, and whatever he felt like doing, he literally did.
Jesse Matthew Jr., a talented athlete. He was offered a full football scholarship at Liberty University, Virginia. His future looked bright.
I think Jesse Matthew always thought himself as a special person, but obviously in his childhood, he was more getting in trouble for some of those special and unique qualities. As he got older and found football, he found this very pro-social way to gain positive attention.
Kids like Jesse Matthew, full of energy, can get frustrated in built-up areas and towns like Charlottesville. Nowhere to run, nowhere to play perhaps. They can get in trouble too. When he was 12, the mother of Jesse Matthew, Deborah, did her best to keep her son out of harm's way.
I think his mother actually moved him out of Charlottesville when he was at the beginning of teenage years and moved actually to the rural area. And so, he lived in what's called the North Garden area of Charlottesville.
The move worked. Early signs of a little waywardness seemed to disappear. By the age of 16, 6'2", 215 pounds, he'd become a state champion wrestler and then a star in his college football team, the Liberty Flames.
Jesse Matthew had the physical physique of a quintessential American football player. He had the large enough physique to be offered to play at the college level.
Certainly, Jesse was a massive figure. He was a large man, and I suspect in those days when he was engaged actively in athletics, he was a very intimidating figure on the field, if you will.
But LJ, as he was known, could be equally intimidating off the field. Autumn 2002 brought a new academic year and a fresh crop of new students to college.
There is controversy that's brewing, and it's brewing on campus. There's a young lady that has made a claim that she's been sexually assaulted. Jesse Matthew, when inquiries are made about his relationship with this young lady, he says it's consensual. And he says that he didn't do anything, never forced anything on her, that this was somebody that he had a relationship and it was consensual on both sides.
To some observers, the story of Jesse potentially sexually abusing a student didn't ring true. Tim Longo would one day lead a team to hunt him down for murder, but the Jesse he had heard about around Charlottesville did not appear capable of violent crime.
I suspect he projected a public image of a playful, gentle giant. I guess there's no other way to describe it. He kind of had that image in people's minds, that he is not the kind of person, this kind of spirit that's capable of something this horrific. I think that's what people felt.
So if he was a killer, what had changed him? When he left Charlottesville for college, the maternal checks on his behavior were removed. Jesse was unmonitored.
He wasn't under the confines of his household rules anymore. He can do whatever he wants in college. There's nobody that's necessarily watching you come and go. And even when he was being watched, people were usually watching with admiration because he was such a good football player. And so I think in many ways, it contributed to him thinking that he could do whatever the heck he wanted.
These guys left family of origin where there was some kind of control and expectations, and were now living on their own independently. And so they could rage. That's a perfect storm, that you have predators who are now not censored by parents. And then you have a crop of young students who don't yet have a peer group and don't really know the town where they are in college. And that's a very dangerous time of year on college campuses.
And Jesse Matthew knew that. and he was banking on that.
Jesse, strongly suspected of abusing a student at his first university, is asked to leave. He moves 200 miles east to Christopher Newport College.
He leaves his first university. He's disappeared, he's off the radar screen, and suddenly shows up on yet another football team, another college, in an area, in a town, in a region where suddenly 2 more women go missing.
Going to a new campus just gave him a fresh start. And we do find also in research, when we look at people who commit violent crimes, that they tend to float from city to city, from community to community to commit these crimes. And generally, you can't pin them down. They don't stay in one community for very long. And that's what allows them to be able to repeat these crimes that they do over and over again.
No link was made between Matthew and the missing women, but at the start of the fall semester, another sexual assault.
Jesse Matthew suddenly disappears, while at the same time, yet another investigation, yet another alleged claim of a sexual assault. But this time, the campus, the college, it's all hush-hush. Nobody will talk. They all rely on privacy laws. They can't disclose the information for the sake and the privacy of the students that may or may not be involved.
That decision meant no one considered Jesse Matthew a sexual predator. He was free to attack again. Dr. Judy Ho studies serial offenders. Matthew appeared confident at that point in his life.
I think oftentimes people who commit crimes and people who have psychopathic tendencies actually believe they're much smarter than they really are. They don't really think they're going to get caught. They're quite grandiose and a bit narcissistic, and they think that they're going to outsmart everybody else.
By 2005, Matthew was no longer a football star. He was working a range of jobs in Fairfax City, another town with a large student intake, with young women around campuses, fertile territory for Jesse Matthew.
In Fairfax City, there was yet another sexual assault victim, but she was a survivor. And in her cooperation with law enforcement, she was able to provide a composite sketch of who her attacker was. And the police were able to obtain a DNA sample.
A picture was emerging of an extremely dangerous man. Jill Harrington and Jane Vance would soon become all too familiar with Jesse Matthew.
Jesse Matthews is a predator. I think predators are different stuff, but predators have to pass in the environment where the prey is, because that's what they do, is they hunt prey.
Jesse Matthew himself, he didn't have cloven feet or horns. If it hadn't been in the circumstance and he had smiled, he would have been a gorgeous young man. He's got a, there's nothing unusual or physically ugly about Jesse Matthew. There just isn't. He's not a demon. He doesn't come as a brutal marauder, except when he's hiding and has hunted.
He had begun as a sex pest, escalated to sex attacker. Were the pieces being put in place in the personality of Jesse Matthew to make him ready to murder?
Jesse Matthew started out as a rapist. He'd prey on women and would play it off that they were consensual. But he learned from each offense, he learned that that was causing him problems, that he wasn't able to be that football player that he perhaps aspired to be. So he graduates not only from sexual assault, but decides, why have any witnesses at all? And he makes that leap from a rapist to a murdering rapist.
I think it's really this idea of upping the ante for yourself every time. Just a little bit more than the last crime, whatever that last crime was. And that feeling of wanting to chase that next adrenaline rush, the feeling of wanting other people to be spectator to what you might consider even a sport, is what's very troubling about Jesse, and I believe pointed the way to the signs that he was going to eventually murder.
Who would be the first victim of a man made for murder?
I'm Jill Harrington, and I'm Morgan Harrington's mom. Morgan's not here anymore because she was abducted and murdered in 2009. I mean, who would think our precious little Morgan would interface with the serial murderer in a nice town like Charlottesville, Virginia, and be taken down?
October 2009, and Virginia Tech student Morgan Harrington is going to see one of her favorite bands.
She went to go to the concert, and, you know, I always have believed in leave-taking. I don't just sit on the couch and say, bye-bye. I get up and go see them out. And she got in her car and, you know, put down her mirror, fixed her lipstick, and leaned out and said, 241, Mama. 241. I love you too much, forever, and once beyond forever. And she drove away and never came back.
Virginia Tech's John Paul Jones Arena was hosting a Metallica concert as part of their World Magnetic Tour. It had been 5.5 years since they last played Virginia. Morgan was excited.
Morgan loved every kind of music, and didn't matter what it was. She had wanted to be at that concert for about 6 months before the concert occurred.
Typical university student decides to go to a concert. She goes with friends.
The concert and the lights are crazy, and she hit her head. So by the time she got to the bathroom, she was bleeding from an open gash.
Morgan steps out of the concert venue, and when she goes back inside, she realizes she can't get in. They won't let her back in. So she called her friends and let them know that she couldn't get back into the venue and that she was going to see about finding a ride home.
That ride would come in the form of access taxis and a 2004 brown Mercury van, driven by Jesse Matthew.
I think there's certain warning signs that we could have seen about Jesse that he was going to eventually kill. And it's the brazenness in which he took on his victims. It wasn't even always secretive. He would do this in the middle of the street with other people watching. It's almost as if he wanted them to know, and he wanted to show people how he can get away with it.
She's going to her destination, and she realizes that she doesn't have enough money for the fare. She almost has enough, but she just doesn't quite have the full fare. Jesse Matthew, the cab driver, decides to barter for his services. He tells Morgan, perform oral sex on me, and I'll give you the rest of the ride. Morgan is so offended, she jumps out of the cab, wants to be so far away from this person that she literally leaves that cab running.
Matthew had struck.
Got the call that Morgan's purse had been found in Charlottesville, outside John Paul Jones Arena. And I came in, Dan was sitting here, and I came in from church. We were waiting for her. She was supposed to look at some math and go over her checkbook with her papa. And, you know, I came in and he said, oh, you know, Charlottesville police called, they found Morgan's purse. And that was like the elevator plummeted from the top floor into the basement, because you knew no woman, if her purse was gone, she would have been on the phone crying. We would have heard from her. So I said, where is she?
October 17th began the nightmare for Morgan's parents. Their daughter never returned home from that concert. They never heard from her.
Leaflets were plastered around town. Hundreds of people were drafted in to search for Morgan. 3 weeks later, a UVA student was on the corner of 15th Street and Grady Avenue, and he made a grim discovery, one which led to a breakthrough of sorts.
Morgan's shirt had been found, and there had been blood on it, and the blood actually was associated with a rape that had occurred in Fairfax 5 years earlier.
The blood that was found on Morgan's shirt provided a DNA profile, a link to yet another case, and that case was the Fairfax City case, the case that provided the sketch, the case that provided the original DNA profile.
There was still no sign of Morgan, and what was discovered confused her father.
At that time, when they showed us the composite, I was stunned, because there was this person who, I said, Morgan wouldn't have gotten into the car with this person. voluntarily. I mean, it just stunned me because it's not what I imagined. I'm not sure what I imagined, but it wasn't what I imagined.
It is what Dr. Judy Ho imagines. Jesse Matthew may have appeared harmless enough to Morgan Harrington.
People who are psychopaths are adept at getting other people to trust them on a more superficial level. And they do this by basically imitating what they think genuinely good people would do and how they would act in social situations.
Matthew's murderous handiwork would be uncovered in stages. For 8 months, Morgan remained officially missing.
There are no rituals for the missing, no Hallmark cards for the missing. It's a strange place, you know? How do you speak about someone who is missing? I don't even like the word. I think it's not descriptive. You know, my reading glasses are missing because I'm careless with them. We were not careless with our daughter. She was stolen from us.
Stolen, raped, and killed by Jesse Matthew, his victim's body finally discovered.
Morgan's body was found, and it was a terrible winter in Charlottesville, and the man who owned the big farm, the 800-acre farm, went out looking at his fences, and he saw, this pile of bones, and thought it was probably a deer.
The hunt was on for Morgan's killer, whose identity at that stage remained unknown.
Jill said, there is someone out here who knows something about Morgan, and they know something because they knew where to put a body. It wasn't just someone passing through town.
This person is in this town. He's a local boy. This is homegrown talent. He is comfortable here, and predators stay where they're comfortable.
He knew the area, or he would not have known the farm as a place to just dump a body. He had been on that farm. I mean, we're talking about a remote part of the farm. And you had to drive by the front door of the house and open a gate and go down into the fields to do this.
From winter 2009 until 2014, Jesse Matthew would walk amongst the streets of Charlottesville unsuspected of any crime. A man made for murder could strike again. Morgan's family were relentless in their quest to find their daughter's killer, all the time knowing a grisly truth.
I was told early in the investigation that it was most likely that Morgan's killer would be found from DNA on another body. And I understood logically that that was likely to happen. But I was bound and determined. I was not just going to sit and wait for it.
They do not give up the fight. They are posting not just flyers, which would be in the traditional sense. They're not just appealing to local media. For the first time in modern history, they're using social media. They are using the internet. They are using the ways that university students communicate with each other. They're getting her face out there. They're keeping this story at the front of the pack.
Their campaign was well supported. Even heavy metal band Metallica wanted to help.
Back in 2010, our band offered $50,000 to help catch the person responsible for murdering Morgan Harrington.
It would have been really easy to try and limit liability and step away from something untoward, like a young woman being abducted at your concert. Instead, they stepped forward. They called Dan 2 days after Morgan was abducted and said, as fathers, we are outraged. How can we help you?
Any information, no matter how small you might think it is, could be that crucial piece investigators need to help solve the case. Right now, there's up to $150,000 reward.
Jesse Matthew was unsuspected, on no one's investigative radar in 2014, so still capable of killing.
Many psychopaths oftentimes have absolutely no empathy. Human life is not that valuable to them, particularly anybody else's other than their own. I believe that Jesse didn't have any empathy for his victims. I believe that he probably didn't feel that much for his victims, and that's what allowed him to be able to do all of those violent things that he did over and over again.
People are not safe with Jesse Matthews free and loose in the world.
Would a man made for murder strike again? A powerful young athlete had grown into a man equipped to kill, and in Charlottesville, Virginia, 2 weeks into the autumn semester, a young woman was missing. It was in 2014 in the timeline of Jesse Matthews' life when Tim Longo appeared.
I was in Texas and I got up one morning and there was an email from a mother from Northern Virginia. And I'll paraphrase the email. It basically said, "Chief Longo, help find my daughter's friend." I quickly called home to find out that a 19-year-old University of Virginia student had come missing over the weekend. So I told the captain that I was speaking to on the phone. I said, "Please keep me up to date."
In 2014, Hannah Graham, a University of Virginia student, volunteered for numerous organizations, had a whole plethora of friends. This one particular night, she went out with her friends. She was celebrating. She had a few drinks. Hannah Graham never makes it home.
The UVA second-year student had moved from Britain with her family to America. Her parents knew their daughter. They knew something was wrong.
By the end of the day, I'd made a decision. I needed to come home. I needed to come home and meet two people that I would come to know, and John and Susan Graham. And I met with them about 2 hours after landing in Richmond International Airport, not far from here. And I made a promise that I'd find their daughter. I had no idea that some 40 days later, the circumstances would be such that their daughter wouldn't be coming home.
Detectives quickly uncover that Hannah had partied with one group of students and then moved on. Security camera footage was requested, which revealed the pedestrian mall as busy on the night of Friday, September 12th. But one person stood out from the crowd.
Jesse Matthew, he is also out, and he is also bar hopping. He went to at least 3 different bars. At each bar, every bartender, all the employees still remember Jesse Matthew. Why? He was a nuisance. He was hitting on women. He was making inappropriate comments and advances towards numerous women that they complained to the bartenders and the waitresses. Jesse Matthew, what was his reply? That he was out to pick up women.
A lot of people knew Jesse. A lot of people knew him from high school. They knew him from his participation in sports. They knew him from his frequenting of places on our pedestrian mall.
The 32-year-old Matthew now worked as a patient technician in the UVA Medical Center on Lee Street, but out of working hours, he liked to party.
After the 3rd bar that Jesse Matthew had created a nuisance at, he leaves that bar. One of his last comments is that he's out to pick up women. Hannah Graham, unbeknownst to her, her path would cross with Jesse Matthew. Her friends had previously offered to give Hannah a ride. She didn't want to be a trouble to anyone, so she said she would walk. But Hannah was confused, she got lost, and even texted that she was disorientated and that she didn't know where she was, somewhere around 14th Street.
Security footage from 5 different cameras in the area showed Hannah's movements that night. The images make for chilling viewing. Hannah is being stalked.
He was very openly interested in Hannah Graham. That was clear by that video that depicted him walking one way and her walking another, and very quickly thereafter, the image of the two of them together.
If you look at the footage on the downtown mall, when Jesse Matthews saw Hannah Graham, in 3 strides, he went from Fat Albert to Cheetah. Because he had to assume the guise of Fat Albert and, just a big gentle giant. But given the chance, he reverted to his real stuff.
When you're in law enforcement a long time, you develop a sense, a gut feeling, if you will, that you're on to the right suspect. And frankly, a lot of people in this community would have said to me early on in this investigation, "You have got the wrong guy. There's no way in the world that this guy could have committed this offense." He was from this community. He played football in our local high school. He helped coach football in one of our private schools in Charlottesville. He was well known, and there were people who just said, you know, Chief, you're barking up the wrong tree.
I believe Jesse Matthew is a predator hiding in plain sight. He wasn't trying to hide his crimes. He wanted everybody to witness them.
He has his arm around Hannah Graham, which would have been confusing for the detectives. Was this another situation where he would claim that this was some kind of consensual relationship? But the detectives, as a result of viewing this video, were able to find some witnesses. And these witnesses even were able to confront Jesse and told them they didn't think that she was willing to go with Jesse. And Jesse basically brushed them off.
Jesse Matthew, a familiar face around town, had seen someone he wanted, whether she wanted him or not.
There are certain types of biological mechanisms that might explain why somebody has poor impulse control, but there's also the idea that when people are born maybe with less impulse control, that if you want to work on it, it's something that you can develop, it's a skill. But Jesse didn't want to work on it. In many ways, he didn't care if he was hurting other people, if he was doing things that other people didn't want. It was all about himself, whatever was pleasing to him. So he oftentimes just flew by the seat of his pants, and whatever he felt like doing, he literally did.
I say it's no different than if there was a rampaging bear in our neighborhood. You don't hate the bear, it's doing what bears do.
But catching a bear is never easy. Hannah Graham had disappeared. Matthew was now in the frame for doing something to her, but what? Having ID'd Matthew on the footage, investigators wanted to bring him in for questioning.
We developed probable cause to obtain a search warrant for his car and his residence. We were not in a position to detain him at that time, so he was free to leave, and in fact, he did leave. I began a very public plea that I wanted to speak to Jesse Matthew. I made that absolutely clear.
We want to talk to Jesse Matthew. We want to talk to him. We want to talk about his interaction with a sweet young girl that we can't find.
I believed he was the last person that saw Hannah Graham. In my words then and now, before she vanished off the face of the earth.
When the police searched Jesse Matthews' car, his vehicle, it reveals gloves. It reveals antiseptics. It reveals a cell phone with the SIM card that's been removed. These are all little building blocks. It's enough to get that warrant to go look at Jesse Matthew and to look at the inside of his apartment. Once the warrant is obtained, when they go inside the apartment, they find a pair of shorts.
The same shorts that Matthew wore on the night Hannah had disappeared. They're sent for analysis, and the lab finds Hannah's blood.
And on those shorts also was semen that belonged to Jesse Matthew.
The combination of that physical evidence and certainly that forensic evidence not only connected Jesse Matthew to Hannah Graham's death, but to the death of Morgan Harrington and to the violent sexual assault of a woman in Fairfax City many years before.
But it takes over a week for those results to come back. In the meantime, the detectives have spoken to Jesse Matthew. He has not given his DNA. He has denied any kind of involvement. And then he disappears. Just like he disappeared from his 2 football teams. He's gone and he's in the wind.
This is every parent's worst nightmare. I'm certain that everybody in this room and those watching knows that what happened to Hannah could happen to their child.
Investigators initiate what will be the largest ground search in the history of the Commonwealth of Virginia, aided by an army of locals, drones, aeroplanes.
Hannah Graham is still missing. She hadn't been found. Over 1,000 people have looked for her.
We spent many, many days first in the city of Charlottesville, which is about 10 square miles, and then in concentric circles began moving outward into Albemarle County, which is our neighboring jurisdiction, some 700 square miles here. And was about 10 miles out where we discovered the remains of Hannah Graham behind a house that actually had been for sale for some period of time.
Jesse Matthew was familiar with the area. He's familiar with the rural areas. One, being a taxi driver. Two, it's areas where he grew up. He knew the territory like the back of his hand. He knew where he could hide bodies and not be discovered.
Jesse Matthew presented himself for questioning at Charlottesville Police Station, less than a minute's walk from the pedestrian mall where he had been seen with Hannah. He immediately asked for legal representation.
The lawyer came, and he spent what seemed to be about an hour behind closed doors with Jesse Matthew. And then the two of them left. And as I said then, I didn't know any more about what happened to Hannah Graham then than the moment he walked inside the police station.
They knew they had their man, but detectives had to prove it. Longo ordered surveillance on Jesse Matthew.
During the course of following him, there was a state police officer in the vehicle and I believe a city detective. He engaged in some pretty reckless driving behavior, sufficient enough to obtain a warrant charging him with reckless driving, and so we did that. And then it's that point thereafter, I believe that Mr. Matthew left the Commonwealth and began making his way to Texas.
He has already shown a propensity to flee. He's fled every city where he's ever been a suspect, and this time, when the noose was really tightening around him, he fled all the way to the Gulf Coast.
Taking his sister's Nissan Sentra, he crossed the county line. Matthew was a man made for murder, and he was out there. When would he stop the killing?
I knew we were against an apex predator who was comfortable abducting, raping, and murdering a girl. And I didn't want him to get another one.
He's a very rare kind of murderer, by which I mean he breaks bones with his bare hands. Who can do that? How is that somehow real, that a human could be a bone breaker? But that's exactly what he did.
Jesse Matthew is a wanted man. Millions of people know his name and now his face.
On a beach in Galveston, Texas, a woman saw his image, saw his face, and recognized him from national media, which had pushed his image and his name and the story behind why we wanted so desperately to speak with him became a national story, and this lady was paying attention to that story. And so when she saw the image of Jesse Matthew, she called the Galveston Sheriff's Office and she said, "I think I know this guy."
For the former defensive lineman, the game had taken a turn. For the first time, his opponents have him in their sights.
I believe that he really did see life as a game. What can I get away with? What can I do to make people respect me? How can I feel more power? And how do I feel happier every day on my own, even if I'm hurting and possibly even killing other people? So Jesse is the ultimate selfish person, and he will stop at nothing to get what he wants in life for himself.
Matthew was arrested on a beach in the Bolivar Peninsula.
Are you Jesse Matthew Jr.?
Yeah.
Authorities began processing his extradition to Virginia, where he would be tried for his crimes on his home soil.
So what is the Virginia one again?
The Virginia warrant is a fugitive from justice warrant. The underlying charge is abduction of a person with intent to defile.
The key to that investigation, the key were the links. One of the greatest links is the DNA. The second is the forensics and the sketch artist. And the third would be never giving up with Morgan's parents. And another big piece of that puzzle is the diligent, nose to the ground police work.
It was a major breakthrough for those investigators, and one that was long overdue.
Charged with the murders of Hannah Graham and Morgan Harrington, Jesse Matthew pleaded guilty.
To hear Jesse Matthew say when asked the question, "And are you pleading guilty because you are in fact guilty?" To hear him say yes, clearly admitting to the murder of these two women was, it was an incredible moment, I think, for their family, and certainly for this community to hear him accept responsibility for those horrific acts.
For the murder of the 2 young women, he was sentenced to 4 life sentences without the possibility of release.
We went to an arraignment in Charlottesville. As this room, very small, and you could get 3 people on each side of the aisle. And so as Jesse Matthew was being taken away, I was on the inside next to the aisle and was this far from him. And he looked down at Jill and me and just stared us down as he passed us by.
Part of Jesse Matthews' defense was that he himself had suffered abuse as a child. The face of a young Jesse Matthew did not betray anything of his nature. Now in court, he was claiming he'd been abused.
I'm sure he had some issues growing up, but there are people who have endured terrible family situations and have gone on to become wonderful people. He had many opportunities, but he still could not change the matrix of what he was. I do think predators are different stuff.
At the end of the trial, and he had confessed, but wasn't sorry. His entire family came over and said they were sorry.
It shocks me that he couldn't say, I'm sorry. He could never express remorse. But then again, I do agree with Jill that he is different stuff than we, and that he doesn't express remorse because he doesn't feel remorse. In fact, possibly, he's most glad that he has those videos to play in his mind.
It's really just a pawn for them to achieve a goal. And that goal is often very selfish, whether it's money or just their own feeling of power and being able to dominate over somebody else.
In contrast with Matthew's cruelty, Jill Harrington's compassion. In court, she offered comfort to the mother of her daughter's killer.
I put out my hand, and I hoped that just normal social discourse would take over and she would reflexively take my hand back. And she did. And I looked in her eyes and I said, my condolences. I know this is difficult for your family also. And she said, thank you.
Jill has always been very magnanimous, and forgiving. I was more, not that I believed it, but I think publicly when we would be with the press, I would take an opposite stance and say, this is a guy who needs to go to the electric chair.
There's only one word to describe what he did to those girls. There's just one word: evil. There's just no other word to describe it. I am not going to go into the graphic detail of how he took the lives of those 2 young ladies, but what he did was just pure evil. And it underscores, I think, the reality that evil walks and there's no place that's immune from it.
Jesse Matthew had a mother who cared and the talent to take him to the top. Why then was he also made for murder?
It's all about the thrill. People who kill, who assault, who do this in a serial manner, it gives them joy, gives them happiness, gives them excitement in their life. And in some ways, being chased and possibly getting caught gives them that sense of danger that they were possibly craving too.
I do feel that there is such a thing as a predator. Maybe it's the same thing as evil. I think that what identifies it is a total lack of empathy and compassion.
Matthew was convicted of 2 murders, but law enforcement think it's possible that he's responsible for many more.
We know what happened to Morgan and Hannah as the result of Jesse Matthew, but there are dozens, that's plural, dozens of women who are still missing out there, who were in the general area in the life of Jesse Matthew.
There have been a number of missing persons in this region over the past several years. It begs the logical question whether he may have been responsible for others.
Will he ever tell? Will he ever reveal? One can only hope that there would be a seed of goodness somewhere inside that evil persona of Jesse Matthew.
Dr. Judy Ho thinks not.
Jesse is not somebody who had empathy for anyone. Jesse is a kind of person who really cares about himself above all else. He has no value for human life except for his own, and people are just pawns in his game.
Jesse Matthew, a man made for murder.
He's not stony. He's glib and happy about what he's done, I'm sorry to tell you. And it's really disconcerting to try to figure out someone, because what you're really doing is trying to turn them into someone who couldn't murder. But he is someone who can murder. And when I say to law enforcement, I can't understand, they say, thank God. Because if you could, you would be capable of something that is unthinkable.